Support for Donnybrook is provided in part by Design Air Heating and Cooling.
Seems fair to me. Well, if you don't know what fair is, you can't make it. That's like any reason.
Donnybrook is made possible by the support of the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation and the members of 9PBS.
There's a line from the movie Sweet 16. Hot, very hot. Yeah, for those of you who remember that one. Hey, and I looked it up. The high for the day 6 weeks ago was 40 degrees, so let's not complain about the weather. And it's all good times. Welcome to Donnybrook. I'm sitting in for Charlie Brennan today. And next to me is media veteran Wendy Wiese. I was on KTRS today, Wendy.
That's what you said.
I'm
sorry I missed it.
Sorry
I missed it.
Donnybrook founder Bill McClellan from the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. Political writer from the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, Joe Holleman. And joining us tonight in my seat is Jamie Mowers from Webster Kirkwood Times. Welcome aboard.
Thank you so much for having me tonight.
All right. Well, I tell you what, a little bit of bad news. Kit Bond, former senator, governor, and just a really genuine politician and nice man, passed away this week. And I know we all had some, met him and had some stories about him. So I'll start with you, Bill. Just something you remember about the former governor?
Okay, well, besides the fact that he employed our old friend Ray Hartman.
Yes, that's right.
He had
launched his career.
Yes, he did. Kit Bond had been around so long in Missouri politics that he said he could never, when he was introduced to somebody, he could never say, nice to meet you, because I might have sat next to the guy at chicken dinner. So he said, whenever I'm introduced to somebody, I say, good to see you. And if they're over 60, I might say, how's your back? So I'm amazed you remember, Senator. He was a very nice man.
He was.
He was indeed a very nice man. And as Ray pointed out, and if those of you who are interested in reading Ray's column, it's Substack. It's Ray Hartman's Soapbox on Substack, and he's sharing all of these wonderful stories, but most of all that he was so committed to the people of Missouri, and he truly was. And what I enjoyed about him as a member of the media, and I'm sure you guys all had these experiences, he did not take himself too seriously. He took his job very seriously. He took the United States Senate and the governor's mansion before that, Attorney General, very seriously, but he did not take himself too seriously, and that was lovely at the time. He had a great sense of humor.
I think I remember when I was younger, he was actually, if you recall, was one of the liberal Republicans that were coming up.
Yes.
He and John Danforth were, and there was a wonderful quote in Mark Schlinkman's obituary where Danforth said that when he took office as Attorney General, he hired him, Kit Bond and a couple other young people, and he said the one thing we had in common is none of us knew what we were doing. So it was nice to see that honesty. But I liked how he signed out of the Senate when he said, I was the youngest governor in the history of Missouri. I don't want to be the oldest senator in the history of Missouri. So a classy guy, a Republican, but one of those old school politicians who, when it came down to it, seemed to be willing to sit down at the table and hammer out agreements that everybody could live with.
Absolutely. Missouri is advanced before a lot of other states on parents as teachers because of Kit Bond. My mom was former president of the Missouri State Teachers Association, and from a young age, we were taught to answer the phone, read residents, whoever speaking. So I was at college, and I was home, and I said, read residents, Alvin speaking, and he said, well, hello, Alvin, this is Governor Bond. Is your mom home?
Wow.
The phone. It's no, she's not here, but I'll leave a message. So my mom comes in, I said, Governor Bond called you? And even funnier was my mom said, oh, okay, I'll call him back later. He was very much a supporter of education. We need that in this state and the country right now, and Kit Bond will be missed.
He used to call a teacher named Mildred Lewis, who I forgot the name of the school, on the north side, and Mildred was not a famous person or a big union person or anything, but Kit Bond had met her, and he just would sometimes check in.
Yeah, that's the kind of guy he was.
Yeah.
All right. Well, the guys and gals down in the state Senate, boy, they had a busy couple of days and a couple of failed swoops. It looks like we will be voting again on reproductive rights. The minimum wage will be $15 come August, but there will be no cost of living adjustment, and sick leave is out the window. On top of that, $500 million that the governor wanted to send to the city of St. Louis for development downtown has also been at least put on hold for now, which would mean it isn't going to happen until next year. So, Joe, a lot was going on. We'll start with the reproductive rights. It seems to me that we voted and it passed. Why are we still going over this again?
Because the state legislature had the power to do it, quite honestly. I mean, that's why we're doing it. And it's not like it's the first time that the state legislature has ignored a referendum vote and have come back and said, no, we didn't really mean that. I'm of mixed mind about it coming back. I'm sorry to see that it could be overturned. But I do believe that it shows, and I've said it on this show before, we have to have a higher threshold than a simple majority to change the constitution of the state. Because what can happen then is it'll keep bouncing back and forth, and especially an issue like this. In my mind, and it's my opinion only, but let's assume this time that they turn down the right to an abortion, then the pro-choice advocates will be out for the next couple of years working on it, and it goes back on the ballot again, and things have changed as such, and then it gets passed by 51%, and then it goes back. That's why there just needs to be a higher threshold so that the politicians realize that the people aren't this slim majority wants it, but that's really what the substantial part of the
I agree that we need higher than a 50 plus 1 to change the Constitution. But what really bothers me about this one is the way they have worded it to make it look like this is allowing abortion. Should a woman be allowed to get an abortion, blah, blah, blah. It says nothing about we're curtailing a woman's right to choose. It makes it seem like if you're pro-choice, you'd vote yes on this. It just seems like it's a tricky sideways approach. I don't like it at all.
And I think, I just think it's embarrassing. I think it's embarrassing. I think you have states that are known as class action states, and we have become the state that overturns the will of the people. And I agree with everything you guys are saying, but it's just, it's terrible. I mean, in terms of puppy mills, I think when you talk about the cost of an election, I think people, at least according to social media, they are irate about this.
And the vote would not be for another year, which I guess it could be held in the spring, but it sounds like we're talking about August, which would be the primary, and then if it was in November for the midterms, I think that would doom, I think, repeal of what was passed the first time. I honestly do. So, and in the meantime, St. Louis, they care so much about St. Louis down there in Jefferson City until we actually need something from them. Thoughts on the money that was taken, or I guess you can't say taken, just never got here in the first place. Any thoughts, anybody? Because I just feel like, once again, they've shown their true color. They don't like St. Louis down in Jefferson City, and once again, they've shown it. So.
Well, I thought as long as the governor was for it, that the legislature would say, okay, that St. Louis is the financial engine of the state, or at least one of the two. I mean, it's Kansas City to argue. But I thought that they'd go along with the governor.
I guess when it comes to St. Louis,
Right.
I guess they looked at him and said, well, you're actually from St. Louis, Governor, so we have no use for you either.
Well, I think they made a hint that he could spend some of his discretional money.
Yes,
if
right.
he wanted to go ahead and do that. I mean, on the other side too is I always hate to throw out the notion that saving $500 million is a bad idea. It's just that this was coming for St. Louis. Mm-hmm. So I think that's the part that kind of gets in my craw.
Yeah, exactly. Let's be a little provincial here. Nothing wrong with that. All right, speaking of which, all right, so the state, for some reason, still has not named whoever's going to be in charge of setting the board, or picking or helping select the people that have been on the board, which sounds to me, just an aside, that they might be having trouble finding people that actually want to do this job. But anyway, the state is still, hell-bent on taking over the state police force. And the city kind of threw them a curve. They said, well, you're going to take over, so now the police department can now pay for its services. So Bill, sneaky move or crafty?
No, I thought that it was a fine move by the city, and I have no problem with it. And I don't think that from the cops that I know, and so many of them are ex-cops now, that finance has much to do with it. It's more of, would you like to go to the old way where the police department answers to a small group of businessmen, or would you want to be under the control of city politicians? And the cops said, we'd rather have businessmen than the city politicians. And so it isn't about the money. And I think if the city wants to say, we're going to charge the police department for this and that, that's fine.
All right. What would people say in Kirkwood if somebody took over its police force, Jamie?
They would probably say no way.
All right.
Yes, I mean, in Webster Groves and Kirkwood, they say we want control of our police department.
All right.
And I'm still with Bill in terms of, let the police officers dictate their own course. And if this is what they want, then so be it.
Yes, I agree.
Okay, all right.
I know.
I disagree.
I know. You've got a big "I told you so" coming.
I disagree, and I know, Joe, you're down with it too. So
I'm always interested in what people who live in the county think of our city.
yeah,
police.
and I'm by myself. I gotta say, you're by yourself today. You're outnumbered.
That's right. Sarah's not here. You're the lone city
Go
dweller.
city.
Go city. All right. We're gonna stay in Jefferson City just for another moment here. House Representative Marlene Terry, North County. Well, when I say cited, I that may not be the right word, but she supported a bill that will now send public money to like a school voucher program. And some Democrats, but mostly the minority chair, stripped her of her committee assignments and just basically said, like, we are not going down that path. Basically, you let us down. She had a statement that she will always stand up and support the kids, and you can't shut her up by taking off her committee assignments. So, Wendy, is Marlene Terry in the right here, or are Democrats just kind of saying, like, there's a line and you passed it?
Obviously she stepped over a line for some of the people for their taste, but I think this probably should have or could have been handled behind closed doors. Maybe an internal sort of, if you're going to rebuke, do it internally. And so I think it's unfortunate that she said that, as you said, she's a fighter. She's going to keep fighting for the kids. So I think in terms of PR right now, she's winning.
All right. Well, they're outnumbered.
They are outnumbered for sure. But I
I'm-
think it looks good for her to make this about the kids.
Okay. Even though
None
of those
She
kids.
None of those
took,
kids.
she took a bunch of money, but
Yeah.
I still, the Democrats are a beleaguered minority down there, and I think this idea of punishing somebody
Right.
and taking away their committee assignments because they voted against the true way, it doesn't make much sense.
Mm-hmm.
I sometimes people do the right thing for all the wrong reasons, and that's what the Democratic caucus did this time. The right reason would have been to say, you voted against our party after you received a then got a $2,000 campaign contribution,
Right.
and had $17,000 worth of flyers printed, which both Blythe Bernard and myself reported on back when it happened, calling into question how sacred your vote was to you. So in that case, yeah, I think that should have been noted. The idea that they took him away because basically what she did is she broke with the party, then it's just basically partisan politics, herd mentality, groupthink. So, but I do believe that at least it brought the attention to is you seem to have gotten money from the very people who wanted you to vote that way. And then that group, once they got their way, disbanded, according to Blythe Bernard, our reporter. So a lot of questions
The
there.
optics aren't great.
Not good. Right. Jamie, money or principle on this one?
Principle.
Principle. So you stand with the.
I mean, it's both ways. I don't like the fact that she took the money, and it's tough. It's tough. But I also agree with Wendy in that it probably could have been handled behind the scenes. that kind of thing could have been a little bit, just like, hey, let's do that. But
Yeah, the Democrats in Jefferson City aren't the 800-pound gorilla.
Right.
Right. So maybe a little just craftsmanship on this would have been beneficial to everybody.
yes, I think so.
You guys are soft. A little public humiliation.
I was just saying, I was gonna say they wanted to publicly humiliate her.
Right.
That's when I said you do the right thing for all the wrong reasons.
Right.
That was part of it, petty and vindictive. Absolutely. It was. Absolutely.
I can be down with that sometimes. And honestly, and I'll be honest, I've said before that sometimes it comes down to the issue itself. And I'm really staunch on this education issue. If it had been another vote for another cause, I would have said that that was a little heavy-handed. So maybe I'm being a little, I don't want to say.
Well, maybe if it
all
was
have our
the key
bias.
vote, Alvin, that it was a tie and Terry went with the money, but
Now that's a good point, Bill. That basically she didn't decide
Right.
the passage of the
Right.
bill. They just
Right.
didn't like what she did.
Well, and the one thing we know for a fact, the legislature did not discipline anybody for taking questionable contributions.
No.
'Cause God knows that would never happen.
well, they're all in line down there.
Jefferson
Exactly.
City would be empty.
There you go. All right. Well, I wonder why maybe the school board didn't take this action, but a private citizen has sued Keisha Scarlett, the former superintendent of St. Louis Public Schools, wants that money back that was spent at Bill's, favorite restaurant, the Chop House. Right.
hey, I know where it is, Alvin.
And I know when we look at it, it's like, God, that was just some dreadful stuff going on. But, a lawsuit is, could it work, or is this some more like legal folly? And I really don't know anything about the plaintiff other than what I read. So I don't know if this is when I say sincere, I don't mean that he's, kidding around. I just don't know, if he's involved with the school district or just a citizen of the city of St. Louis.
Well, and I think when we go back to talking about the legislature being vindictive and mean-spirited, I think that's exactly what it is. And in this case, I'm okay with being vindictive and mean-spirited toward Keisha Scarlett and Cousins for what they did. So, I mean, if that's all this is to embarrass them or complicate their lives with this lawsuit, I say good. My guess, and it's only a guess, I have an idea, is that maybe they needed a citizen to sue them, and the board couldn't do it because, sort of de facto, the board okayed these things.
Are you in a way suing, like SLPS and the board? Are they culpable in the lawsuit? Now I'm asking legal questions that I can't answer.
Yeah.
But
That might be dangerous for all of us to weigh in on the
JB, you were
legal
gonna say
side of
something?
it.
Right. Well, yes, I just wonder, as to Joe's point, can the district bring suit against her, while at the same time it's like, well, they were kind of approving green lighting. Now, I'm sure obviously they didn't know all that was going on, but are they in a legal position to where they could actually do that, bring a lawsuit themselves? Like you said, that's a legal question. I can't answer either. But certainly this private citizen has the right to do that.
Absolutely. All of the allegations would lead me to believe that embarrassment is not on anybody's playlist on the SLPS in terms of when it comes to all of those expenditures that were shady at best. Embarrassed, I don't think they're going to be embarrassed.
okay, and if I recall,
I don't think you can embarrass somebody like that.
if I recall right, Bill, Kim Gardner got sued by.
She did.
Right.
Charlie Lane, a retired policeman, became kind of famous or infamous for suing Kim Gardner. And I don't know if anything happened, but there would be a story in the Post-Dispatch now and then. And I think that I shouldn't talk for Charlie, but that might have been enough for Charlie just to be a thorn.
Right.
We're down the same path about legislators and taking money, taking votes and all that. If we could sue privately any governmental official who did a terrible job
that
at
be
their
great?
job.
Oh my
Now,
goodness.
that line would be
you talk
long.
About, you talk about clogged
I
courts.
was going to say, like, right. And like you say, we could embarrass them, but we would, hey, Mr. Reid, your case is going to come up 6 years from now. Right. And the person you sued is no longer with us.
And
so,
the entire legal community is going, yes.
Yes,
yes.
Bring
sue 'em
it,
all.
bring it.
Sue 'em all. Of course, yeah, there's several filed against the President of the United States right now. So, maybe we're in a new era.
That's right.
A new era. Well, I am very much in favor of the security gates that they are putting at the Metrolink stations. But this week, the St. Louis Post-Dispatch reported that the gates don't work. And Jamie, it's just another thing. Maybe they can fix it real fast.
I don't think so. If history has taught us anything, it's that it's not going to be fixed quickly. And they're not, the person who was quoted in the Post-Dispatch story said they were worse than useless. And now the only thing that's happening is it's increasing frustration, causing delays. The one woman talked about she already has a 2-hour commute. This adds at least 30 minutes. And of course, Metrolink says, oh, but you can touch the buzzer if you don't see a gate attendant to let you in. But a lot of riders are saying, yeah, that came like 30 minutes late. So it's like I know that Metrolink wants, the perception of safety, they want to enhance that. But at the same time, it's like, why put the gates up now? They should wait until the card readers until the whole system can work in tandem. I don't think there's much use in putting the gates up now.
Well, I think it's kind of fun that we have a jail that you can't lock the cells, and we have a Metrolink that you can't unlock the gates. I mean, it seems like we ought to be able to work something out.
We could move the prisoners to the Metrolink. I think you're onto something, Bill.
I'm going to go with something when we talk about Metrolink, I would just, all the money you're spending, add more bus routes and actually help people out. We've tried to shoehorn. We are not a subway city. We are not a commuter train city, and we're trying to make it one. But you look at the cities that have it, people go, well, what about New York? What about Chicago? Those trains have been there 100 years. The city was done. This city was built around the automobile. What people need are a lot more bus routes running north-south on a regular basis, good buses that actually run and show up every 15 minutes. And I think you'd have a whole lot of problems get solved. It's got to be better than putting in gates that didn't work when you put them in.
All right, I got a problem with that. But I'm going to stand up for Toby Roach and the gang that Metrolink is a thing I think that should be expanded. Now, I don't necessarily want to go north-south. I'd rather, like I say, go east-west. I appreciate that the gates are there. I hope that they can get them working because I think they're very important. I think people do feel safer. I mean, even though they don't work right now, I think it still makes you feel safer when you're on the other side of the gate, even if you have to wait a half hour.
I don't know about that, Al. I'm just saying I don't know. I'm not sure that the gate makes me feel safer.
They're safer, but they feel safer, but they're also later getting to their destination. And so the only word that I can come up with is plagued. I mean, is it typical for a city this size to have as many issues with rapid transit as we have had? I mean, it doesn't seem like that is a given.
I would tend to agree with you. When we lived in D.C. area, the
my
Metro worked fine 90% of the time, but it had its issues sometimes, and people would lose their mind, and it wasn't working, and stuff happened. Mm-hmm. But it was way larger, and it's not 100 years old. So there are projects like that aren't as old as New York City's and Chicago's. So St. Louis's could expand. I think it should expand. And, we started with Kit Bond, a quick Kit Bond story. He was speaking at Union Station at a national transportation conference or something like that. And I I don't know. It was more about infrastructure, and somebody in the audience asked about. So, what are your thoughts? About expanding the Metrolink, because it has since expanded. This was back in the mid '90s, and he said like, nobody really cares about mass transit. We like to drive cars. We drive cars in Missouri, and these people from all around the nation, we're kind of just like looking at each other. Like,
does he know why we're here?
It's kind of like.
The man spoke the truth.
spoke-
Yes,
right,
he
right.
did.
Yeah, I mean,
Yes, he did.
I literally I had a cup of coffee. It's like we're in the morning. This is when I worked at RCGA. And I'm kind of like,
Did he say
Did
that?
he say that? Man, I just went.
I'm a U.S. senator. I can
Yeah.
say anything I want.
That's exactly
All right, and we got about a minute left, but Bill, you brought something up, and I do want to throw it out there. Incarnate Word is going to be moving from North County, and man, that's a blow, don't you think?
Oh, I think it's a terrible thing. I mean, Incarnate Word is such an anchor of North County, and the idea that it's going to move to St. Charles, no farther than that shopping center, which is a far
That's
distance.
out there, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I thought, gosh, it's just, I mean, maybe if I ran Incarnate Word, I'd say this is a good thing. But just as somebody watching from afar, it's very sad.
Yeah.
Yeah, and sad especially because I understand their reasoning. I mean, you have to do what's best for your school, and
Right.
more of our people are out that way. We've got to go where our audience is. So the sad part is it is the smart move, and it's too bad that is the smart move.
And CBC, CBC moved from
From
your
my neighborhood.
neighborhood out west, and I believe they did it really without so much
And
of
I
a
used to
glitch.
complain to my wife about these kids are parking their jalopies in front of our house every
And now
day.
you miss them.
And then all of a sudden they weren't there. And
Now you miss
well, what's
them.
going to happen to CBC?
It's doing well out there. Mike Shannon did well by that school. It's beautiful right there by the highway. All right. Hey, if you want to send a letter, please send it to Donnybrook, care of 9 PBS, 3655 Olive Street, St. Louis, Missouri, 63108. Send an email to donnybrook@9pbs.org or a tweet to #DonnybrookSTL. Give us a call at the comment line, 314-512-9094. And you can find us on a podcast any place that you find your favorite podcast. Hey, head on over to YouTube. We'll be back with you in just a couple of minutes as we discuss another couple of topics, a little sports, and one that's out of this world. You'll know what I'm talking about when you come back. I want to thank Jamie Moores from Webster Kirkwood Times for joining us tonight, and we'll have some more fun on Last Call. Thank you for joining us tonight. Stay in the cool. Have a good night.
Donnybrook is made possible by the support of the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation and the members of 9 PBS.